Hi everybody, welcome back to the stream. Hopefully you're enjoying it and you've gotten some great information from, well, me of course, but Grant and Kathy as well. Grant, Kathy, they're somewhere. So now we want to talk a little about DevOps and compliance. Compliance is becoming a bigger issue, and so I've got Richard and Grant here to help us talk through this a little bit. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Jones and I run SQL Server Central. I founded that site about 15 years ago and I've run it for quite a while with the goal of trying to make you better at your job every day. But prior to that, I've been a DBA and developer and manager at various companies throughout my career, and I've been working with SQL Server for over half my life, 26 years now. So I've had a lot of experience, and Redgate, or sorry, not Redgate, but Microsoft has honored me as an MVP for the last 10 years as well. So now, Richard, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Richard Macaskill. I'm a product manager here at Redgate. I've been here for a few years. Before that, my background's in financial services IT in the City of London, in insurance, in financial services, in foreign exchange trading. So I've also been a DBA, been an IT manager, been a BI dev, I've been a regular dev, about 20 years old in using Oracle and SQL Server, and now I'm product manager for SQL Clone and getting involved in a bunch of other things for Redgate to do with compliance.
Excellent.
Right.
All right, well, my name is Grant Fritchey. I too work for Redgate Software. I'm a product evangelist. I've been an MVP for only 9 years. Hoping for again next year, I'll make it 10, that'd be great. But I've written a couple of books, SQL Server execution plans, query tuning, some other stuff. And I am the incoming president of the PASS organization. If you just saw the thing on the monitors, that just went by a little while ago, a commercial about PASS. Hope to see it at a PASS event sometime soon. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So we want to talk about data governance, but data governance leads us to talking about compliance. And talking data governance and talking compliance leads us to really want to talk about DevOps and the ability to integrate processing and testing and all this automation stuff around a repeatable, reliable process that's going to protect your systems better. Whoops, whoa, that was weird. All right, I only hit the button one time, skip 4 slides. Anyway, what is data governance? Well, we've got a nice definition here from TechTarget, and we've got a nice definition from Gartner. But really, what it's down to is that you are responsible for your data. As a developer, you're responsible for your data. As a DBA, you're responsible for your data. As a SAN admin, as a manager, as whatever you are inside your organization, you are responsible for your data, and you're going to have to take advantage of that stuff. Take responsibility for that stuff and deal with it. The fact is that all this stuff is coming down our way and we have to do more than we did previously. The whole idea here is when we start talking about data and we start talking about databases and we start talking about DevOps, the idea is to eliminate the silos, to break apart the concept, that there's this dev team and that's all they do is dev and they throw things over a wall. And then there's this DBA team and all they ever do is worry about security and production systems and they catch the stuff that falls from the wall and there's not a communication mechanism, there's no way to get things across. That's all got to go away. We've got to realize the fact that data is absolutely about the business. It's not an IT asset. As much as DBAs are going to say it, this is mine and I own it, the fact of the matter is it's actually the business. It's their stuff. And we have to work with them in order to arrive at the best ways of dealing with things. What that means is we have to start making our decisions around data management as part of our build and development process. We cannot escape the fact that data management, compliance with data is becoming a more and more vital part of the process of what we do. And it's moving us from look, hey, I know what's going on, don't worry about it, I've got it all covered, trust me, to wait a minute, let me see your process. Can you show me, has it documented? Can you show me your artifacts? Can you show me, your process and how it works and how you control who affects what and what changes are coming? All of that information has to become from, hey, we're from Missouri, show me, right? It's got to be done correctly now. The whole idea of just like, these trusted people, we're still there, we're not going away. But as trusted people, we are building a process that lets us hand things off. Now, where all this is coming from, Richard's going to explain.
Okay, so Compliance has been around for a while. Okay, there've been regulations for pretty much forever. We've seen various waves of legislation. For example, in '96 we've got HIPAA coming in. We've got the Sarbanes-Oxley coming in We've got legislation coming in on the back of Enron, on the back of the Lehman's collapse. I was working in financial services when Lehman's collapsed, and we had a complete sea change there. But there's a kind of change in change in the environment as well. There's a change in the kind of legislation that's around. So some of these are quite sort of prescriptive, and they tell you what to do and what not to do. They tell you what circumstances you're going to be pursued, you're going to be penalised under. For example, the UK Data Protection Act. That's the main legislation at the moment in the UK. Harm has to be shown. You have to be shown to have done harm. Others have very specific requirements. So HIPAA is quite specific about how you categorise the data. Some of them are very specific, some of them are slightly less specific and a bit more about a risk assessment, but the ones that are coming in now, and especially the GDPR and the applying to people who hold European Union citizens' data, are not about telling you what to do. They're not saying have SHA-5 encryption. They're not saying back up every night. They're not going to lay it down for you. They use language like, you must implement privacy by design and default. They use language like, you must implement appropriate technical measures. They're not inviting you to tick some boxes to do this thing, then that thing, then that thing. They're inviting you to think it through with your business, to adopt a risk assessment framework and to do the right thing for your business context, for your customers, given what data you hold and what you're doing with it. And that's quite a different approach to some of what we've seen previously. And it's not just the European Union, although remember the GDPR applies to everyone who holds EU citizens' data, not just people in Europe. You'll also find similar sort of thinking coming through in the NIST draft guidelines that are being revised at the moment. They're moving from being an instruction set for federal bodies into being general advice for US business, which US businesses are being encouraged to adopt. Again, it's risk assessment. It's appropriate technical measures for what you're doing and what you're holding. The ongoing industry regulations aren't going away, of course. You've got those very specific regulations. You're still going to worry about them. But the definition of who is a regulated industry and who isn't are changing. We're not just looking at the things that are specific to our particular industries and those very, very narrow specific concerns. This is really everyone. And of course, we've got the concern at the rising tide of data breaches. Nobody can have missed the enormous Equifax breach, the 140-something million, 53 million something with Uber. These are affecting everybody, as Simon Galbraith said in his opening keynote. This is affecting all of us in our daily lives. There was a very interesting case recently in the UK. The UK High Court found against the supermarket chain Morrison's, this is about third or fourth supermarket chain in the UK, and they were found, I wrote it down because I keep forgetting the phrase, vicariously liable. So they were hacked by an insider. There was a disgruntled employee who had access to some sensitive data. He put it on the web. He exposed the HR database of the whole organisation, and that still Morrison's, despite being the victim themselves of an attack by a correctly privileged insider, were still found to be vicariously liable. And this was groundbreaking in a couple of ways. This was the first class action lawsuit involving data in the UK. So even in a not very litigious society, we still had a class action lawsuit on data. We're going to see more of that. And also we had this sense of liability even for the victim. So why do we need to comply? Why do we need to worry? Apart from, there might be just, this, maybe it's like being struck by lightning. We just, we're not Equifax, we're not Uber, we're a small to medium-sized company. What are the odds? We'll probably be okay. Well, the fines are intended to be dissuasive. In fact, that's in the language of the law for the GDPR. The GDPR was designed to be dissuasive. And so going from fines like the UK Data Protection Act, 500,000 to a small company, £500,000 is the maximum fine. That's kind of dissuasive. It's not to the big companies. The biggest data breach the UK seen was TalkTalk, the mobile phone provider. And they were fined just under £400,000. Not very dissuasive at all. So in comes the GDPR, in comes the NIS directive, which is about cybercrime and goes hand in hand with that GDPR. And here we're saying 4% of global revenue, enough to make anybody sit up, or 20 million euros, whichever is the greater. So the fines are increasing. The commitment of the regulators to make them dissuasive is increasing. Who cares about this stuff?
Nobody cares about this stuff. Come on.
Everybody cares about this stuff, really. Certainly, we've been concerned for a long time. Right?
Oh, yeah.
We're the
Oh, yeah.
data professionals, we're the developers. Well, maybe not developers, right? But certainly the DBAs.
Yeah.
We've been concerned about
We've been concerned.
how we handle data and what we do, and we're usually the most cautious. But all of our management, from our board of directors down to IT line management and everybody in between, is certainly concerned about this because there's criminal acts they could be liable for. There's certainly financial losses to the company, and so they're starting to be more and more careful about what they're doing. But we also have people like sales and marketing, right? Because they got to talk about it, how we talk to our customers and present ourselves. If we're not careful, that's certainly an issue there.
Well, and then externally, you've got to deal with all the stuff that's coming in. I mean, it's not just the regulators. I mean, sure, the SEC, the FTC. I mean, all these guys coming in. That's fine, right? The authorities might show up. You might get a visit to the judge. I mean, you might be sharing a roommate, a cell with a man named Tiny. It happens, But more importantly than that, really, is your clients and your customers are going to be showing up, and your shareholders. If you're a publicly traded company, there's going to be external people that come in that really, really want to know how it is that you're protecting their information. And so that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, even your private companies, right? Because,
yeah.
Right, like if you have a company and you lose data, your wife's not happy, right?
God, no.
And there's one more we didn't put on the slide. We talked about, Grant used to work in insurance.
Yeah.
Most of us have business insurance, and I could see insurance really trying to avoid paying out for breaches if you haven't done a good
Especially
job.
if you've not set up the right kinds of processes and documented them.
Yeah. So we ran this data governance survey, and a lot of our customers are affected by this. Obviously, we're a UK company, and so we're looking at GDPR ahead of time, and our customers are as well. And we found that most of them either have a data governance program or they're planning to build one because of, I assume, the regulation, right? And maybe they're just being proactive as well. But plenty of them have said that the regulation is a driver for them, and so they're working this direction.
And then the interesting thing is that some of them have already successfully set up their processes. They're already running. And what we found was the successful ones already had a whole series of tools. Further, through the survey, we found that there were some unsuccessful processes set up. And interestingly enough, there seemed to be some correlation between the number of tools used because the failed processes only used a few tools and the successful ones used more. So while we're talking about process here and some of the stuff, the fact is that tools make things easier.
Yeah,
so
because this is hard stuff, right? We don't always know what to do.
Oh my God, no.
When I first went through SOX or went through ISO, there's no guideline of what to do. You have to kind of figure it out. So you spend, I think, as much time just trying to decide what to do as you do doing it, right?
Yeah.
So tools make a difference. I mean, we're a tool vendor, obviously, but tools certainly do make a difference here, and they're very cost effective.
Right.
So it's not just using tools though, right? And it's not just a regulation, Richard, right?
Right, Richard's going to tell us some
We'll try to achieve compliance in different ways.
That's right, yeah. So, I mean, you might think when you're coming across this, if you've not experienced it for the first time, I experienced it for the first time after the Lehman's crash, when the FCA brought in regulations. I was working at a trading firm at the time. And first instinct, which boxes do I have to tick? What do I have to do?
Right.
Can I buy a thing with a blurb on the back, a software product that's going to say, help you achieve that?
Right. Change this setting, encrypt this thing.
Yep.
We're good. Right.
Yeah. Not really. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
If that was ever true, it's never. It's not. It's less true than it's ever been.
Exactly.
So this language, sort of appropriate technical measures. What the heck does that mean? Appropriate technical measures. I can't work with this, but they help you because they tell you that you've got to care about the things that they care about. You've got to care about data privacy by design and defaults. You've got to prioritize the protection of customers' data.
Right. You've got to treat that data the way you'd want your data treated, right?
You've got to care. What this is all about is aligning your cares, your interests with theirs.
Right.
And if they've got to use a stick to make it, they'd like to do it with a carrot, but they're also prepared to do it with a stick.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to stop people getting away from their obligations as well. So you might think, well, I'm going to outsource all my data processing. This is too painful. This is tedious. I don't want to hire somebody who understands all this stuff. I'll just send it all elsewhere. Well, you know what? In the GDPR text and also in the text, this is a concept that's coming through in other legislation. We really expect to see stuff like this in the US under the NIST directive. You've got data controllers. You've got data processors. If you're a controller of data, if you've gathered your customers' data in by transacting a sale with them, and you send that data somewhere else for something else to be done with it, for a marketing campaign, you're liable for the good practice of that other organization.
Right.
So
So both of you could be liable.
both
then,
of you, you're jointly liable.
Yeah.
And you know what? We did this presentation earlier today for the European audience and
Right.
possibly some early risers on the East Coast. And we found, and I got back to my desk, and there was an email there from a company that Redgate works with asking for us to verify that we are fully compliant with GDPR in the way that we're handling data that they've provided to us. So in that kind of rising tide raises all boats kind of a situation.
Right.
And that's what the regulator wanted. That's their ideal.
Are we compliant, by the way?
We're working very hard to be fully compliant.
We will be there. We got till April, but we're working on it now.
Yeah, we're doing our best, and that's also the regulator. They've been very clear. They want to see best efforts. They want
Right.
to see serious, honest endeavour to do things right. So what else can you do? I mean, you can't outsource it. You can maybe ignore it. You can maybe see.
You could stop doing backups too, right?
You can
We
stop
don't
doing
want to do that,
backups.
though.
You could. Well, there's an organisation in the UK, Wetherspoons. It's a pub chain. Runs
Yep, I've seen
hundreds
them.
and hundreds of pubs in the United Kingdom. They decided that they were going to delete their customer database. They just deleted it.
Well, that makes deployments really easy for
See-
me. Right?
So maybe you can, and they decided that it was a business decision. They said we're not going to run promotion campaigns, we're not going to do customer loyalty programs.
Right.
We're just going to sell drinks over a bar,
It's cash.
real cheap,
Right there.
and that's our only business. And we're
Yeah.
not going to run that stuff. So if you're in a situation where you can drop your customer database, I doubt many people out there are.
Yeah, probably not.
If they are, why are you watching? Yeah. But
Let us know if you
if you
can do
can
that.
drop your customer,
I'd like
I'm
to
really
know.
interested. So you can kind of make it go away, or you can. But wishful thinking probably isn't going to help you. More likely, the way that you're going to find that you can comply at a reasonable cost, appropriately for your business, is by aligning your way of thinking with the regulator.
Right.
And do what it just adopts the risk assessment framework. Just say, look, I'm going to examine everything that we do, and I'm going to reduce risk, and I'm going to try and bake in quality. And I'm going to try and bake in privacy and correct control in
Right.
the context of what we're doing with business.
And so one of the ways we do that was with DevOps.
Yep.
Right. So DevOps is this amorphous concept that I've been talking about, and plenty of other people do, where really it's nothing new. It's a lot of practices that we've been doing for years and years. The best software developers and companies have been doing many of these things, but DevOps kind of gives us a name and a way to just have the conversation, right? Talk about the concepts. And I love this quote from Donovan Brown where we say that DevOps is ultimately about delivering value to our end users. Now, I know everybody says they're going to do that, right? That's your software developer game, but there's plenty of developers that worry about their code, or they worry about getting their thing done and not, is it actually valuable to the customer? All right, we get a feature request, you get we have Post-its here all over, right, at
Everywhere.
Redgate. So I have to get the Post-it from this side to that side, and that's not delivering value to your customers necessarily. It could be, but you have to keep the idea of value to customers the most important thing. Not getting my task done, not getting something tested. It has to get to the customers. And it doesn't matter who does it, what process, what platform, what products, tools, whatever it is. It's about just keeping that goal in mind of getting value out to the customers. And as part of DevOps, compliance comes into play because DevOps allows us to respond at a better pace to meet the requirements that we have. Just like a business decision might say, I need to do something different to respond to this opportunity or meet a customer requirement. This is kind of like another customer requirement, right? Now the regulation and the government's kind of a customer.
They're your customers as well. You've got to
Right.
care about what they think.
For me, at least, my auditors have been my customers because I have to make them happy. So it's very important that I can respond to whatever things they do. And having a DevOps process where I'm using CI/CD to ensure that it's a consistent way of releasing software and that I'm masking my data, or obfuscating it, or correctly handling it is important. And then certainly providing my developers good environments, right? A lot of the data breaches we've seen in the last few years are not production systems. They're copies of production in QA, in development, or somewhere else that haven't been secured, they haven't been masked or obfuscated, right? No sanitization at all. So they're losing that. And so part of using DevOps is that we want to get better at building software, not just releasing features to our customers, but also ensuring that we're responding to everything we need to do. That means we have a better process. I think somebody said earlier, DevOps isn't a recipe for just releasing more trash. Was that you? Grant said that maybe? Somebody said that.
Some famous guy around
Yeah.
here. It was,
Yeah, DevOps isn't about just releasing crap to customers fast. It's about becoming better at how you build software, which is hard for us because we don't always want to change our process, right? I'm good at, I create a class file and then I commit it to source control and I write a unit test and I send it off. Maybe there's a better way to do that. Maybe I need templates, maybe I need snippets and prompt like Grant showed earlier. I need better ways to build software, and that's what DevOps is really doing. So today we want to go backwards in our DevOps story, kind of, right? And Grant's the guy that loves to think in production first.
I'm the backwards guy. I'm absolutely that. Yeah, so really, I've been a DBA for a long time, right? I worked as a DBA, I think like a DBA, and I'm paranoid. And I mean, I just flat out, I'm a paranoid control freak. That's what DBA means. And the whole idea here is that we're going to protect our production environment, but we need to deploy faster, we need to validate the code, we need to be ensure that we're in compliance with all this data stuff that we're talking about, and we've got to do all of that while moving quickly. I mean, so we must protect production. So I like to think of this going backwards. What are we doing in production to ensure compliance? What are we doing in production to protect production? And then, okay, cool, now we're going to deliver code. What do we have to do to ensure that that code works prior to getting to our production server? What kind of automated testing, what kind of automated processes, what sort of documented automated processes generating certain kinds of artifacts and whatnot can we do? Cool. Then how does dev work to generate that stuff? And how do we provision dev in order for them to operate correctly? So it's sort of the opposite direction of how most people talk about this stuff. Most people start talking about source control, checking code in and out, and then automating your builds, then automating your tests, and then, hey, we're in production. Yeah. That scares me. But if I go back the other way, I can meet them in the middle, and we can arrive at a process that works. So we're talking about monitoring change. You had a couple of things you wanted to say about this.
Yeah, well, you might think, well, monitoring, what has that got to do with compliance? Come on, compliance is box ticking, compliance is encryption, but you have a look about the so protecting your data again in the GDPR. There's language like records must be accessible in a timely manner. They've got things like subject access requests. You've got to respond when somebody says, "Show me all the data you have on me. Show me how you're using all my data.
Right.
Remove my data from your systems." You've got to respond to those things in a timely manner. So you need availability. You can't say, well, we bring our CRM database online once a month so that we can run the marketing emails.
Right.
That's not on the cards.
No.
But across the board, ISO 27001, which a lot of people are using to certify for GDPR compliance.
Right.
Records should be protected. Big increase in the US as well in ISO 27001. The HIPAA's always had this available on demand. So you need to know that your data is protected, that it's available, and that it will continue to be available. So there can't be any surprises when you're
monitoring actually becomes part of your compliance process.
It's a key part. It's got to be in there.
And and it goes a little further. And we're gonna go to a demo right now. Let's see if we get it right. Haha, mostly right. There we go. So if we were to imagine that this was our let's go. Come on, this is machine. If we were to imagine this was our enterprise, right? It's a very small enterprise right now. It's only a few instances of SQL Server, but we're keeping an eye on things. We know if they're up, we know if they're down. We're already working within the compliance mechanism. We know things are whether and how things are running. But there's more to compliance than simply that, and there's more to monitoring than simply that. Now, if we drill down on one of the machines, we can see, uptime, CPU use, all that fun stuff. We can get down into all the information that Kathy Kellenberger went over with, top 10 queries and all that interesting stuff. Don't get me wrong, exciting, fascinating, vital information. But I want to focus down a little narrower just now. What we're talking about is the fact that we can monitor now for deployments. If you notice this little icon right in the center of the screen, let me hover over that. What we've done is that we've now built into our monitoring tools an integration with our deployment tools. So that when we see deployments coming out the door, in this case, a ready roll deployment 1.0.13, I know what code got deployed. I can go and find that code. And when someone comes in from the audit, how do you know what changes were made? How do you know who made the changes? Where is this stuff? You go, oh, it's right here. I've got it all documented. I've got it all tracked. I can show you exactly when those changes came in. And I've got that process laid out in such a way that we all know what it is. It's all documented and it's all automated. So this gives me the ability to track all the changes that I make in real time. And further, as a DBA, how exciting is it to know that, look, gosh, we got all these spikes in the CPU right around the time we did a deployment. I wonder what might have caused that.
That was my code.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So I mean, right there, we can track down the person who got it wrong and get it fixed. So I mean, as a DBA, this is very exciting stuff. And that's it for now. But we also need to talk about change control, because again, moving backwards around that arc, we've got, what's compliant, right? Well, compliance is all about getting stuff that works, right? And having things go through a documented process, and protecting your production environment in such a way that you know what's there. And that means making lots and lots of small changes through an automated process, going through CI, continuous integration, going through CD, continuous delivery, automating all these things, and then recording those changes in a way that's meaningful and understandable and can actually be human readable. We can actually track all that stuff over time in order to deliver functional software that also protects our production environment. In fact, this acts as an additional protection on your production environment. Now, we have this great quote from Dave Farley. He did a webinar for us, and the whole idea is that when they were building, I always forget the name of the company.
LMAX,
my gosh.
trading exchange in London, all electronic.
I don't know why I can't remember that. I have no excuse. Anyway, when they were building LMAX, they started right from the very beginning. They began using continuous delivery, and they began doing full automation, automated testing, and just did it all that way right from the start. And it, as he says, it makes a gigantic difference. So
that's right.
You're up.
One other thing they did, which I always mentioned, they did database provisioning from day one.
Oh, right.
So they copied down. So I don't want to start a storm here, but there's some people say never use production data outside production. They had the sanitization scripts from day one, and they felt that the best way of baking quality in
is to ensure that they were as close to
developers,
production as possible.
realistic
Shift
data
left.
as soon as you start writing your
Right.
code.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, hang on. You got something to show off here.
Exactly. So so that change that was made there with the potentially dodgy code, with we saw a load of IOPS activity, a load of memory spikes going on after that.
His fault, right?
That's why I'm a product manager. The engineers are way smarter. But that change was a change that I pushed through this morning, and I want to talk a little bit about how we do change control and why is that so important. So our change control demo is on the same machine. Let me just take you through what's happening here. So that was a ready roll deployment. Here's my ready roll project that I deployed it from. Let me just zoom in a little bit because I get told off every time I don't zoom in, so Grant's happy now. Now I've got a couple of changes here. Basically, I just dropped a table and I added a column to another table. I'm not sure my change caused all that much trouble, all that much, that caused those spikes, but I'll argue that with Grant later. But the point is, all I did was make some changes, checked it in. You'll see plenty of ReadyRoll demos elsewhere on the web, but ReadyRoll took care of making that into a packageable, deployable change for me. And just by checking it in, of course, I got a build running. So my build is in Visual Studio Team Services, and I can see some sort of happy news here. I can see lots of green bars. I can see that my build happened at the time that you saw on there. I've got success, I've got nice bars, I've got some tests ran and passed. Okay, so that's good news. Let's have a look at what those changes, that build actually involved. So my build has got all the regular components that you see in a build. So we get our sources, we get our NuGet dependencies. ReadyRoll does some of its magic, sets a target database. My project actually also included the way I like to do it, also included a data service, and it included the integration tests. So I build them all in one, and I can see what happened when I ran one of my steps. So actually I create in my case, of course, I've got SQL clone at my disposal. We do use SQL clone in Redgate, we dog food it. And SQL clone is, as you've seen, if you saw Steve's demo earlier, it's such a game changer when you can stand up databases of any size in a few seconds. In my case, I use it to run my tests, my integration tests. So I just stand one up that only lasts as long as this is a 4 terabyte database, by the way, that only lasts as long as I need to run the integration tests. I've only got 4 You should have more than 4. But I've proved the concept, and I've exercised my changed code against a real database, which is a copy of production. Now, I might want to approve these changes. Now, I certainly want records, but I might also want to add an approval step. And one of the things that the Redgate tooling gives you, in this case ReadyRoll, you get something similar from DLM Automation. It's something that stops you having to do the, looking through the 50,000 line script, because nobody likes that. So this has summarized my differences. It's not a 50,000 line change, but it's summarized my differences in a way that's comprehensible to anybody. So I've removed the dbo.ssi table. I'm going to handle that elsewhere. This is a refactoring. And I've also modified my trade order table. If I look down here, I can see what the modification was. There we go. I've added a column, a unique identifier column called compliance checksum. So that's good. I've got passing tests. I've got change that's easy to understand. Maybe I've got a manual step at the end of this. It depends on your organization, depends on your preference. But I've created a release here. So the release you saw that Grant showed you was a release to the CI environment, my dev integration environment. This is using that same build. And I've got those same artifacts. So if I want to, so they come with it. The build itself is an artifact for the deployment. If I want to examine the script, the exact script that's going to be deployed, if I am that masochist who wants to read the 100 lines of script, I can do so. I can see where it was generated and who created it and exactly what it's going to run. So there's my change. And I can release it. So I can take control of this release. I can deploy it to production when I'm ready. And those artifacts, they'll last as long as I want them to last. It's just a setting in Visual Studio Team Services. I can say I want this to stay forever. I'd never deploy this, never delete this. The auditor's coming at some point. I'm going to show them. I'm going to accelerate that audit as well. If you've ever been I've been in a room where we had to pay extra because the audit was overrunning. That wasn't a comfortable place to be, let me tell you. So it's not just it's about doing the audit, it's about accelerating the audit, and it's about making these things comfortable, reliable, and easy. Make the hard stuff easy.
Yeah, we have all the information at our fingertips that we can give to the auditor if he asks a question or she asks a question. And we can go back in time, and if we have any questions about when were particular changes made. I think some of the classic DevOps stories or some of the classic problem stories that people have had is often they weren't sure which code was deployed where or when.
Yeah.
And it could be good or bad, certainly, but we want to know when we've deployed that code.
That's right.
So as we move forward here, we've kind of gone around in a circle. We started in production where we could see what changes were made, right? What things were actually run and the impact there. So we have the auditing that says we know this thing got to production at this point in time.
Yep.
And we have all the various metrics that we're trying to track, right? CPU and all that stuff.
And the right review took place. So if you're an organization that's implementing privacy by design and default, there was design that went into that software change.
Right.
We have to examine that. Is that impacting data privacy in any way? Do we have to think about that? Do we have to go through another pass of comprehending our change?
Right, and then Richard showed, in the development area where we're doing the CI/CD build and release, we could have a gate in there which would then tell us who approved the change that went through at what time.
Yep.
And they would have had to, I guess we can't prove that they actually reviewed the change, but by their account marking it, they're responsible to say, I reviewed that change. They click the button.
You click the button, you better review the change.
Yeah, and we can design all that in because we build that process out. It's consistent, and we can say that we know exactly what's happening in our process. Like you said, we designed it, it's programmed, and because we don't have somebody trying to connect to a database with Management Studio or copy a folder to a web server, we know exactly what happened. We don't leave anything to chance, essentially. So now we want to move down even further. So before we get to development, before we start writing code, we want to be able to provision environments for our various developers and other people, right? Mm-hmm. And there's things that we have to do. One of the big things is that our development team wants to have data that's useful, makes sense to them. If the business gives them a requirement or asks them a question, they can look it up and it looks real, right? They have the ability to test the application, but they want to do it on demand. So they want these database copies or database provisions on demand. Many of us now probably deal with refresh once a week or once a month or
once a quarter. I've seen that a few times. Yeah.
And so we don't always have the copies. We may work in a shared environment where we all get one copy, and it's not easy to try something new or experiment or work with other code. So we want that on demand. We want it to be self-service as much as possible. And we want to make sure that DBA knows where all copies of this data are, right? Because potentially some of it is masked, but some of it might not be. Some of it might not be sanitized. So we want to be sure that DBA always knows where the data is. And lastly, we want to have some way to protect that data when it leaves that very secure production environment. So we want it sanitized, obfuscated, masked, changed, whatever we want to do.
Permission swapped.
Permission swapped is a classic one because I don't want production counts in development. I certainly do not want development counts in production. So we can't have that stuff. So we want to look at provisioning with SQL Clone, which you worked on, and which is a fantastic product. I did a session on earlier. If you get the chance, you should go back and watch it if you missed that. But otherwise, Richard, why don't you show us how you provision databases with Clone?
Yep, sure. So let's have a look at how we stood up that database. So that change that I made before that went through that compliance approval process that was available to be reviewed for impact on data protection and privacy, that was available to be assessed, that was fully tested, and for which I've got all those records. I actually made that change against a clone database, and it was a clone database created from quite a large database. So this was in fact it was this one here, which I've got a trades data mart. All my examples are based around foreign exchange. So the trades data mart is a 3.7 terabyte database. I've got 11 clones across my environments running across it. Oh look, Steve's demo, and Steve's turned his machine off. Oh no, this was here we go. Here's an error from trying to deploy a 2017 image to a 2016 instance. So I can just clear those out. I'm the administrator, so I'm going to clear those out. But more to the point, I'm going to show you how you create a sanitized image that's going to fit into the workflow that we want to run. So this is for developers. So I've had a little look at, let's just switch to SQL Server Management Studio for a moment here. And I've had a look at this AdventureWorks database. And I'm kind of worried because there's all sorts of sensitive stuff in here. I've got, let me zoom in here. I've got an email address. What's my tooltip say? Where to send a person email? Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Employee pay history, pay histories. I don't really want that. Phone numbers. Phone number types. Let's just run this and see what that data looks like. And if I zoom down here,
what do we see now?
I can see all these real AdventureWorks database values for the email address. I can see people's pay rates. I sure don't want that in development. I can see this resume field that's got some XML in it. It's got the actual resumes captured in XML, and I've got people's cell phone numbers down there. So I'm not happy with this. I don't want to give this to the developers. I'm I'm a DBA that wants to do something about sanitizing this and providing a little bit of protection. So I've written this script. It's not the best script in the world. It's not that clever. Testedexample.com. I think that's been done before. Employee pay history. Let's just set the rate to 1, 2, 3 for everybody. Let's blank out those resume values, and for the home and cell phone numbers, I'm going to set them to 0.
And this is just normal T-SQL. Like this was the kind of thing in the past you'd have to manually run when you refresh the development data.
So I might put a batch together. I might put SQL agent jobs together that does. I mean, it's pretty painful. A lot of organizations have got these brittle scripts that do the restore from backup with move. You've got to think about the disk layout. You've got to think about the disk space, all sorts of things. But we've got a provisioning product. We've got a provisioning tool. So we're going to have a go at using that to make our life easier. So in my create image workflow, if you saw Steve's demo earlier, he did it from a live connection to a SQL Server instance that was registered. So I'm just going to use a backup file just to be slightly different. And I'm going to do it from a backup file that's on my dev instance. This is a single backup file. I could use striped, differential.
Wait a minute. You're using a backup file?
Yep.
Now, hang on. My backups are important.
Yeah. So are mine.
Okay. All right.
I'm not going to. The only thing I'm doing with this backup file is exercising it. I'm reading from the backup file, and I'm going to create an image from that. I'm going to manipulate that image with my script while I'm creating it. Then I'm going to block it off. I'm going to put it onto my file system. as a VHD, ready to
Okay.
be mounted as a virtual disk.
All right.
And when it gets provisioned as a clone, what I'm doing is exactly the same as, effectively I'm reading those pages out and I'm mounting them as a database.
That's like a restore.
It's like a restore.
So you're testing my backups.
Yeah, it's exercising.
Oh,
It's
great. Keep going.
The thing everyone
I love it
forgets
that
to
you're,
do-
you're testing my backups. That's
yeah,
excellent.
You get that for free.
Okay.
So I'm going to use this this backup file that's on my. This backup file isn't password protected, but I could handle that if I needed to. And I'm going to move on in the workflow. So, do I want to make modifications? Yes, I do. That's why I wrote that script. So let's have a little look at the modification I want to make. I'm going to select a SQL script from my computer. And there's the thing that I saved, my masking script for AdventureWorks 2012. This is version 0.9. I'll go on in the workflow, and I'm going to tell SQL Clone a couple of other things. The UNC file share, where I want to store that image that's good, ready for creating the clone. Remember, this is like a pay once. It's like a pay once free refills.
Right.
That's the US analogy, isn't it? You pay for the first coffee. You pay for the first image because it does use disk space. It is copying those blocks of data over into a file share.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always called the image a tax, right? The tax is unavoidable. You got to pay the tax, but then you get all the free stuff later.
That's right.
Just like with the U.S. government.
So this one time, I'm moving the bytes. I'm shoveling the bytes from one place to another.
Right.
I've not chosen a big database.
Okay, but wait
we're
a
in
minute.
demo land here.
Okay, but wait a minute. What I just saw there, you are creating a new image, yes? Mm-hmm. But you had that script thing.
Yep.
That's part of creating the image now?
Yeah, I've told SQL Clone while you're creating this image, before you make it available.
When did this come out?
Well, last week.
Crap, I
You
got to
check-
stop
check your
traveling.
email. You were on a plane.
I got to stop traveling because it's interfering with me getting to see the new toys. So you were able to take that script that you were showing Steve that cleans the data, and you were able to run that when you create the image
That's right.
in SQL Clone.
It's part of that single process. So we've been surveying people for,
Cool.
So SQL Clone, it's been out for what, 10 months?
Right,
We've
yeah,
been
yeah.
surveying, we've been talking to people about it and surveying people for, a couple of years, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we consistently hear that sort of 35-40% of people have data masking scripts, sanitization
Right.
scripts that they want to run as part of their provision.
Oh yeah, I had all my own scripting built out so we could protect our production data.
That's it.
After, by the way, a really horrible story that I can't share with you right now, but it did involve adult-themed pictures. But
I've heard that story. You don't want to hear it.
nobody wants to hear that story.
So a large number of organizations have scripts. They have their own processes. So we're baking this into SQL Clone.
Cool.
Now I want to create a clone database from this. So let me just I'm going to deliver this to I can deliver this anywhere in my network if I want, but I'm going to deliver that back onto my dev machine, this same machine. And here's what I'm doing. I'm going to create a database called AW Masked. Now.
Yeah, and I've seen this already. This is magic.
So yeah, I mean, have you seen this
That
already?
created a database. Just so you know, that was what, 3 seconds, 4 seconds?
Yeah, and you know what? It's kind of similar regardless of the size of the database. So
Yeah.
we support up to 64 terabytes.
And so the 4 terabyte database you were creating before,
That's
4 terabytes. by the way.
Seconds as well.
Right.
So it's not just fast because it's a small database. 327 meg.
Now, if there was anything that would slow this down, I mean, because this is fast, and I know it is. I've tested it. I've run it over and over again. I've demo it. I love this product. I mean, can't get away from it. But if there was something to slow it down, what would it be?
It's there's roll forwards. If you're deploying onto I've got a 2017 instance that I'm delivering a clone into.
So if your
and
backup
it's a
has got like
2005,
some ridiculous number of open transactions within that backup,
Yeah.
and it has to undo or redo the log.
Transaction
That-
undo redo.
Yeah,
That's one of them. There's also the upgrade scripts from versions.
Oh, from moving
what I
from moving
mean
one
is
version to another. Yeah, okay.
You
that-
give me a 2008 R2
Right. So-
image, then I'm going to have to make it into 2017 compatible.
Right, but so
engine
absolutely, as much as this is magic, I mean, it really and truly is, you're still going to pay some of the standard processing stuff. I mean, you're not going to get away from those things.
No, but you get away from most of them.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know, I will, especially.
Great
I mean,
bulk of it.
Yeah, you do, you really do. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. It's just, I like to be realistic.
Okay, so now I'm using my AW mast database. That's the thing.
Okay.
That's the clone that I've just delivered.
Right.
And I'm gonna run this. So I want to know what those values look like now, and guess what? The scripts ran.
Oh, that's great.
So my it's testedexample.com. So you know, your story isn't going to do too much damage. You know,
Oh,
somebody
cool.
plays that prank on you again.
Oh, I'm going to go relax now. This is awesome.
It's going to go to testedexample.com, even if you have got an SMTP server set up in Dev. Your pay rates are 1, 2, 3, so there's nothing sensitive. There's not going to be any arguments in the office over the pay rates, and all those cell phone numbers. They've been the resumes have been removed, and those cell phone numbers have been set to 0. So I'm happy as a DBA. I'm going to let developers self-serve. I've done my job. I don't mind if they bake it into their CI processes, if they stand these databases up to run their integration tests. They can knock themselves out. They can hit it till it works. You know, they can work like application developers, because it makes it so much easier to work in an environment where you're the only person responsible for what happens to that database. So, you know, and people working with database code are often forced into sharing scenarios where they don't really want to be it. This lets you hit it till it works, do as much as you need to, automate it, and I know as a DBA that you're working with a sanitized copy of the database, the thing that I've thought about and figured out, and I'm happy to share and happy to have in the organization. And also, of course, I've also got visibility. So I can recall, as an administrator, I can recall these clones if I want. And in fact, quite a few of our users have done that. If you see Steve's demo, and you can rewind and watch it, or you can watch it when this gets put out onto YouTube. We have many of our customers have come up with sort of, you know, mechanisms using PowerShell. Clone is PowerShell first, it's API first. It's and many of our customers have said, okay, you can have a clone for 7 days. I'll put a time to live on it because I've got a script that runs and refreshes things, and that's gonna make them disappear when you've had them for 7 days, so I don't get sprawl. But regardless, I've got management here. I know that I've got 10 copies of this Trades Data Mart database, and I can recall them. I can work with them as I need to, and they're the version that I'm happy to share. So there's provisioning, compliant provisioning, in order to help us comply with the data privacy and protection regulations.
Cool.
And it helps us do more of a DevOps process now, right?
Right.
Because we can move at our pace. We can create and recreate our database as needed. And plenty of people in our survey found that was valuable for them as data governance. By
Right.
having the kind of DevOps in place, it makes it better. And certainly DevOps helps in any number of ways. By putting all that instrumentation and monitoring in there, we have an understanding of what's going on. We have transparency. We have auditing in place. The change control and testing ensures that it's repeatable, reliable, it's less risky.
Oh, yeah.
We can trace through exactly what happened.
Well, I mean, and as a DBA, not even a DBA worried about auditing, not even a DBA worried about compliance. This is added protection for my production environment. I mean, we are absolutely doing more to ensure that production is protected. Let alone the fact that going through this provisioning and masking stuff is going to be part of our compliance processes. We're going to be worrying. We're going to be making the auditors happy, and we're going to create an audit trail that they can track and ensure that what we're doing is right.
Exactly. And I always tell people, right, you're creative, you pay us to solve problems, we think of things, but we're not repeatable, we're not reliable. Right?
No.
If I have to deploy to production 1,000 times, it's not likely I'm going to get it correct 1,000 times over and over, especially when I have multiple steps. So this kind of ensures that. And then the masking thing we saw in Clone, which is super cool now with the images, it helps ensure that we haven't got data out there that potentially can cause an issue. And we can automate all this stuff, right? Redgate gives you some tools to make it easy, but we can plug into any platform out there for CI/CD, VSTS, TFS, Bamboo, Hudson, Cruise Control, Jenkins, whatever you want to do, we'll plug in there.
Right.
And we plug into the process in many places, right? We've got a whole suite of tools here that kind of plug into different parts of the system, and almost all these I think are part of the SQL tool belt. Maybe Clone isn't, but everything else is.
Yeah, and so I mean we're right there, right at the start. You start provisioning stuff, we're with you. You start to developing stuff, we're with you. You're going in and out of source control. We've got the tools for that. Exactly,
we're ready to go. And so we've got a few more things coming now. So Richard, you've been involved with some of these acquisitions and new
Yeah.
products. So
Yeah,
we've got about 5 minutes. You can tell us a little bit about what's coming.
Sure. Okay. So we've also been, if you saw our CEO, Simon Galbraith's keynote speech at the beginning, you'll know that he kind of dropped me in it a bit because he said we're going to get a sort of micro preview. So I'm just going to talk a bit about some of the things that we're doing for 2018. And these are coming up really soon. We've made a couple of acquisitions. There's a product called SQL Estate Manager, which we've created from an acquisition. We've got a data masker for SQL Server, and we're also tying together a lot of our capabilities so that we get that sort of cohesive picture of what is going on in our SQL estate. Because it's all very well having great tooling for a very specific, very narrow case, and then having another piece of great tooling. But we're moving into a place where it's not do it right, it's do it right and show that it's always done right and it can't be done another way. And that involves a bit of the bigger picture. So I mentioned the first piece of that story, and this is initially to help people with complying with GDPR, with complying with other regulations, with complying with concerns about data privacy and protection. And we think the first thing you've got to do is discover your SQL estate and classify it. So you need to know where all your SQL estate assets are. You need to know how many servers you've got, what kind of servers they've got. You need information about what's on them. And you need to provide the business context for that data. Nobody else can really do that for you. You need to be able to say, this is this environment, this is another environment, this is personal data, this needs to be protected, because those decisions are going to steer what happens in your software development processes, in your data protection processes, your recovery time objectives, whether monitoring is on, whether availability groups, resilience, encryption, all these kind of things. The answer is going to be different in different environments and different for different data sets, but it needs to be thought through up front. And so SQL Estate Manager is going to help you manage that and control that for your organization. So that's one part of it. We're very excited, and we're getting that ready for January. We're looking for a January release of a whole suite of products, a whole package of products to help you with these data protection concerns. The second piece is Data Masker. Now, Data Masker, we acquired a battle-hardened, tried and tested product. I mentioned earlier, 35–40% of people tell us that they've got a script for sanitizing data, but not all databases can be sanitized that easy. It's not always as easy as update email, set email to test at example.com. What if you've got foreign keys? What if you've got keyed values which are themselves sensitive data? We hear that in the UK, the NHS identification number is very frequently used as a key. That's not so easy. That's not so simple. So we've got this sophisticated. You can mask pretty much any database, any kind of scenario. You can pipe in generated data or sample data that's appropriate for you. You can generate your own custom sets of those. You can use sampling to try and get the distribution right. You can put together really complex rule sets. And we think you can mask pretty much any database with this, as I say, tried and tested, battle-hardened masking solution. And we're baking that into SQL Clone as well, so that just as you ran that script runner, you'll also be able to say, instead of that script runner, run this masking job using Data Masker. Right. Further, we're building out what we call a vNext of data masking. We're building out an ingeniously simple approach to data masking that's going to take a lot of the pain out of it for you.
A pretty one too.
It's prettier. So yeah, I mean the Redgate designs, being brought to bear, and some thinking on how to make this stuff straightforward, how to make it simple. Right. Because pretty much everyone's going to have to do something along these lines.
But you did say that you can maintain distribution on the data. So like if we've got like data skew in production, we can reflect some of that in our development environment. So
that's important
cool.
for a lot of people. A lot of the time, there's some sampling stuff in there. There's all sorts of sophisticated tooling to handle the really hard stuff.
I will try not to be on a trip when this gets released then.
So hopefully you've enjoyed that, right? Thanks a lot. All right, it was good. I think we got everything out there we wanted to talk about today, right?
Certainly did today. Yeah, this time.
It's a lot of information out there. We know that. Please feel free to get a hold of us if you want. You can always contact us at Redgate if you'd like, and we've got our Twitter handles there.
And after today, go by the Redgate. It's late. Redgate.com/hub.
Hub.
Right.
And we've got forums there you can ask questions. We've got articles where we're talking about the products, and you'll see some stuff about the estate manager and data masker coming forward, and then more live streams next time. Hopefully we'll do this soon next year.
Yep.
So thanks a lot. Next up we have me again. We're going to talk about Compare, and I've got joined by my very tired colleague that came back to the office tonight. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thanks.